G'day, how's it going? So we've just gone live on the YouTube. There's going to be a few moments delay, so I'm just going to give it the customary old technical issues opening until I get the thumbs up that the audio on the stream is going okay. Call me paranoid, but I like to get this now. So if anyone who's watching this from home on the live stream, if you can jump in the chat and give us a thumbs up or give us a comment, and let us know that you can hear us and you can see us okay. That'd be grouse, mate. That'd be grouse. So yeah, my name is Miles. I'm the National Campaigns Coordinator for Fusion Party Australia, and I'm incredibly excited to be here tonight. So we're trying something a little bit old and a little bit new, something different and something exciting, and we're trying some new things as well. So what we are doing tonight is not just one event. We are in fact doing 4 simultaneous events. Before I get into the excitement for that, though, I'm just waiting on this thumbs up from YouTube. If I could get a message from anyone who's on the stream right now that the audio and the video is coming through okay. Yep, so I can... Yep, okay, looks like audio and video is good, so that's pretty exciting. Well, in that case, I think we're ready to kick off with the formalities. And yep, good messages coming in from everyone. So what I will ask is that you, for those of us who've joined the Jitsi meeting, if you can turn your microphones off, unless you're until you're one of the designated speakers, but feel free to put your cameras on so we can see all of your wonderful faces from all over Australia. So as I said, we are, as I hinted before, my name is Miles. I'm from Fusion Party, the National Campaigns Coordinator, and I'm incredibly excited to open this event tonight, which is not one event. It is, in fact, 4 simultaneous events, because we are not just any old political party. We're a political party that uses science and technology and innovates and comes from that background of being willing to innovate with new technology and push the cutting-edge boundaries. So we are streaming in from all over the country. Obviously, I am hosting tonight the online event, but also I'm hosting the in-person Sydney event here in Randwick. And so you can see I've got with me candidates Brendan Clark and John August for the Sydney campaign for Fusion Party. And I'm also incredibly excited to announce that we have candidates who will be streaming in from Melbourne with their supporters there in Brunswick. And we'll also have the Queensland team streaming in from Brisbane from their campaign office in the Fortitude Valley. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Brisbane, you'd know that Fortitude Valley is actually the nightlife hotspot. So you guys are going to hit the town afterwards. I just know that. It's going to be so exciting. I can see the wine and beers already flowing up there. Hell yeah, Queenslander. So very excited to welcome everyone here tonight. Very excited to see so many people coming in and coming on. We are streaming live. This will be recorded, so you can watch it back later. You can hear our wonderful voices. There's going to be no edits for that either, hopefully, right? No edits. So we're just going to roll with the mistakes and see what happens. I'd like to keep it kind of casual and have a nice bit of sort of back and forth. I'd also love to get some questions as well. So if you're watching the stream, please put your questions in the chat. If you're in the Jitsi, please put your questions in this chat. If you're on the Jitsi, sorry you can't like, favorite, and subscribe. But if you're on the YouTube, please like, favorite, subscribe, because we are obviously the hottest streamers in town right now. And in 4 weeks' time, almost exactly 4 weeks' time on May the 3rd, we are going to need every single one of you to not just like, fave, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, but also do so on the ballot as well, because the election has been officially called. We have an election date, and right at the moment, we're in the middle of one of the possibly highest stress periods of our whole campaign so far, which is the nomination forms and payments to the Australian Electoral Commission. So I'm incredibly excited from a Sydney perspective to announce that we've handed in our first batch of candidate registration forms today. I've made one of the biggest payments I expect to make in a while to pay for all of the Sydney candidates, and handed in all the forms as well and dealt with all the drama. But the AEC is a very professional organisation. I'm very happy that they will give us the support to run a campaign, not necessarily the political support, but the support to do so in a way that is fair and democratic and just, and they've been very accommodating in that sense. So the numbers off the top of my head are that we're currently looking at 25 candidates around Australia. And over the past week, we've moved approximately $70,000 around between various donors, sponsors, accounts, campaign teams, and candidates. And at this stage, at least 30,000 of that has now been deposited with the Australian Electoral Commission to pay for candidate fees. So we have finalised the candidates for Queensland and for South Australia. For New South Wales, it is approximately half finalised. And then over the next few days, we will finalise the Victorian candidates and the West Australian candidates. So we're literally exactly halfway through at this point, both in terms of states and in terms of overall candidates. And so this is, as I say, one of the most high-stress periods of the campaign. So that's why it's so exciting that we can have all these candidates here today, ready to mark this milestone. Now, I want to get into it. So enough sort of blathering about the bureaucrat. Let's talk about the policies and the values and the politics themselves. I'm going to, as is traditional, I'm going to, if you've been in any one of my meetings ever, you will know that I always love to start with Queensland. I don't know if you can tell where my home state is, but there you go. If we had any North Queensland candidates, you would definitely be first. I'm a Townsville boy, just as by the by. So we're going to jump over to Brisbane very shortly. I'm going to introduce our candidates there one by one, and we're going to get them to say a little bit about their campaign, their political vision, and we're going to hear from them at the heart of Brisbane's Fortitude Valley. But before we jump into that first, we're going to do a little bit of a sound check. There's something very, very special that's been prepared for us tonight by one of our candidates and one of our supporters. And we're going to be hearing from them quite a bit, I think, both shortly, but then also later. So I want to, before we jump into Brisbane, we're going to head down south to Melbourne for a little bit of an introductory special event. And here's something from one of our candidates down there. Owen, you guys ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yep.
All yours.
Okay, go.
Hi, my name's Erin McGrath. I'm the MP candidate for McEwen.
Yeah.
Where's the on button? It's that one. Sorry. Technology. Don't you love it? I don't know. Hello? No. Come on, just turn that a bit down. Yeah, just that one. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Hi, my name's Erin McGrath. I'm running for McEwen. So I'm MP candidate for McEwen for Fusion Party. And McEwen, this one's for you. NDISH care in our fight, the pot for all, bringing hope to our fight. Stronger healthcare services that soar. When we stand, let's open the door. Centrelink reforms, fairness in sight, Indigenous rights, voices amplify. Housing reform in the seat of McEwen. Vote for me. That's what I'll be doing. Erin McGrath, your voice in the fight. A community united, shining bright. With passion and purpose, we'll pave the way for a brighter tomorrow. Let's seize the day. Upgrading our roads, let's ease the strain. In our community, we'll change the game. Mental health matters, we'll rise and ignite. Australia demands Medicare in our fight. On May 3rd, McEwen will rise with strength in numbers. Show them our might. Centrelink reforms, fairness in sight, Indigenous rights, voices amplify, housing reform in the seat of McEwen. Vote for me. That's what I'll be doing. Erin McGrath, your voice in the fight. A community united, shining bright. With passion and purpose, we'll pave the way for a brighter tomorrow. Let's seize the day. Yes, sir. So I just wanted to say before I finish up there, I'm Erin McGrath, MP candidate for Fusion Democracy First Party, and I'm here to tell you that if you want change, then here we all are. And to our competitors, we're not going anywhere. Go, Erin.
Thank you so much, Erin. That was fantastic. So it's going to be a number one hit. I can't wait to get the mixtape for that. All right. Well, now that we've opened, we can hear from a few of our candidates in the traditional order, because who am I if I'm not a stickler for tradition? Everyone knows how much of a conservative I am. It's classic. So we're going to jump back to Brisbane for real this time, and hear from some of our candidates there. I'd like to put on the spot a very special gentleman who's been nose to the ground hard for approximately the last 3 years. And our very first candidate to speak tonight will be, in fact, the lead Senate candidate for Queensland, Chris Simpson.
You're on.
Well, way to go. Okay, we've heard so much about the housing crisis. I'm an ex-tradie, so my passion is about the labour shortage crisis, and it is a national labour shortage crisis. And unless we do something about it, by looking at TAFE and high school collaborations, we won't get there. There is also a serious gender imbalance we seem to lack as far as trades go, and unless we address that as well, we won't get there. It's not just about building for the Olympics, it's about making sure that we have the residences constructed, the right residences constructed. With due respects to Meriton, most of us don't live in Meriton apartments, yet they go on as part of the things that economists add up. There's a problem there. We don't live in them. They're generally sold overseas. So we need to address the jobs, the skills shortage in Australia. We need to also address the construction methodologies. We need to look at the better ways that are being done, whether it's Singapore, whether it's the Scandinavian countries, whether it's modular systems. There are better ways to build, and we can do it. We are capable. We are ready to do it now. Renewables. Currently around about 40% of renewables across Australia. But it's not the renewables I want to focus on. We need to focus on storage. Storage is essential if we're going to get there, and it's not just lithium. We need hydro, we need pumped hydro, and we need to fast track pumped hydro. Yes, the batteries are a part of the fix, but we need to get there, and we need to get there quickly. With renewables, $2 billion spent in 2022, nearly $5 billion spent in 2023. Large-scale storage is the answer, and we need to get there quickly. Last of all, we're living in a changing world. We've seen what has happened as far as tariffs go. We need to look more wisely as to how we see manufacturing and our self-defence for the long haul. If the subs ever arrive, great. We may not see them for a long time yet to come. We need to look after ourselves and now. Thank you, Chris Simpson, Senate candidate here in Queensland.
Thank you so much, Chris. Inspiring words. So we're going to, I'll put Frank on the spot, and then a very hard act to follow up. But obviously, if you'd like to speak about your platform and the things you want to add in there, Frank.
I'm on.
You're on.
Hi.
I'm mainly concerned I have a background in environmental issues, but I'm mainly concerned now with raising job seeker to a level where people aren't living in poverty. The level of job seeker is just totally appalling and it's cruel. So my main focus is raising job seeker. And if you want job seeker raised to the level of the pension, vote for me, Frank Jordan, the number 2 Senate candidate in Queensland.
Thank you so much, Frank. Now we're going to hear from our lower house candidates in Queensland. So I'd like to welcome the glowing bright pink vision in the screen right in front of us, Gina Marston. Take it away.
I'm here. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Gina Masterton. I am Doctor of Philosophy, not a medical doctor. My career is in the legal field, so I became a barrister in 2000 here in Queensland, and spent a long time in the legal world. The last 11 years I've spent in academia. So I have a law degree, a master's degree, and a PhD all in the area of law. I've tried for 25 years now to advance women's civil and human rights across a variety of issues, mostly around recently, the last 10 years in domestic and family violence. So that's still my primary area of concern. We're not addressing this problem in the right ways. I have a lot of ideas around that, starting with helping men with their mental health. As young boys, maybe going to schools, creating a program where we can go into schools and talk to young people starting high school, 11 and 12, about building confidence, building self-esteem. If they're having problems at home, who is available to help them kind of resolve those problems, because kids coming to school angry usually means there's something going on at home, and then those angry young boys become angry men. And I think this domestic, just everything we're doing is doing something, but it's like putting a band-aid on a bullet wound. We need to really go back to the root cause of this problem, and have other ideas around dealing with those issues that are occurring right now. But 2 women dying a week is not a good thing in Australia. We're doing very poorly in this area. So I'm wearing this colour. I could come and dress as a lawyer or dress as an academic and be another middle-aged woman talking about this issue. But, I'm really trying to bring attention to this by being seen. And if I'm seen, I might be heard. So that's what I'm kind of saying to the constituents of Ryan. I'm running as for the lower house for Ryan here in Brisbane. I don't actually live in that area. I'm not far from it, but I don't live within that area. But I have worked at Kelvin Grove at QT for the last 3 years, so that's very close to the area. I know a lot of women that do live in that area. I did live at the Gap for 2 years during COVID. So I do know the area. I know the people who live there, and I know the demographic in that area. So, I've been talking to women for the past 11 years about this issue, and I don't know any woman that hasn't been touched by DV. I really don't, either themselves or they know somebody close that has, or their friends going through it, or they're, somebody they know. So that's my main concern, overhauling the family court, because it's not really working for anybody. In a perfect world, children would be able to have contact with both parents if the relationship breaks down. It seems to be a money-making business, not really, there to provide justice to families. So I'd focus on that. Major changes to the Family Law Act, all that kind of thing. So that's kind of my focus. But obviously, like everybody else is saying, I'm open to hearing about all the issues: housing, homelessness, discrimination in the workplace. Women of a certain age, are facing that. Affordable education, HECS debt. I mean, I still have HECS debt. I probably will have HECS debt for the rest of my life. I mean, we used to have a free education system here. So, I mean, without having an educated society, we're going to have a lot of problems. All the issues. But my focus is that on the women facing domestic family violence and all that flows from that.
Thank you so much, Tina. So if you're living in the seat of Ryan in the inner north of Brisbane, please get out there and volunteer and help out. The main focus of our Brisbane campaign is going to be in and around the inner north, and I'm so excited that we do have this dense cluster of candidates, the Senate candidates, that you could support those lower house campaigns. And then obviously our second lower house candidate, I'm incredibly excited to announce we have with us Rachel Blackwood for the seat of Brisbane. Now I'm gonna ask you to speak, Rachel, but tough it out and see how you go, and I won't force you to speak for too long, and hopefully you'll be okay with that voice.
G'day. Thank you, Miles. Thank you, Queensland team. I've given my voice to Erin for this evening, so you're welcome, Erin. Thank you all for tonight. I just wanted to let you know that I'm here to tackle housing affordability crisis and homelessness. I live in a rental, so I feel that every single day. And I want the people of Brisbane to have support from their government in regards to that. We should advocate for large-scale investment in public and affordable housing to ensure every Australian has access to safe and secure accommodation. Just like Gina, I'm also advocating for survivor-centred policies and social support systems. So I'm an advocate for stronger protections and accessible support services for survivors of family, domestic and sexual violence, ensuring a trauma-informed approach to justice and recovery. Aside from that, I've just left my IT career of almost 20 years to start my own ethical fashion label, because I do believe that we need to have a sustainable economy and circular economies in place. So I'd like us to push for large-scale investment in renewable energy and sustainable business practices. Excuse me, I'm going to have to stop.
I can see you're literally running out of words there, but that was some very powerful words there too. And you hit on a few. I just want to focus a couple of highlight policies there, which I'm incredibly excited by. Not me personally, but I know that many people in the party are extremely excited by the idea of a circular economy. And in fact, it was one of the key policies of the Vote Planet Climate Emergency Action Alliance. That was one of the founding parties of Fusion, and indeed many of our supporters, members and candidates, including Cami Corden-Hunt from Mansfield in Victoria, has been a big advocate of circular economics and donut economics as well, to move towards a more sustainable economic and social and environmental model. But obviously there's a lot of different proposals on the table for how we can do this, but we all broadly agree within the gamut of the ecosystem that is our movement, we all agree that change and reform and improvement is needed. And so that's why we're having these discussions, trying to figure it out. So thank you so much, Queensland. Thank you so much, Brisbane. Thank you to our 4 wonderful candidates there, Chris, Frank, Gina, and Rachel. And really excited to see where the Queensland campaign is going. It looks very strong so far. And I definitely want to see more of that content out there, talking about homelessness and DV and abuse and the cost of living crisis. So let's start moving south now, and following the hands of the clock, which you probably guessed is the way I like to do things. I'm going to break with tradition slightly though, because we do actually have a central/northern New South Wales candidate, very exciting, on, I believe the area is referred to as the Central Coast. But before we get to him, I want to just jump into Sydney first, because I'd like to open for our New South Wales candidates with one of our longtime veterans, one of our longest standing candidates, both in Fusion Party and prior to Fusion Party as well. And so I'm obviously talking about John August here. So John, I want to bring you to the stage and give you a bit of a platform to speak about the things that you're standing for in the seat of Bennelong. If you want to introduce yourself.
All right, just a moment. I will, in fact, do my best to time this one. So yes, my name's John August. I've stood way back when for the Secular Party and then for the Pirate Party. So I've been, concerned about injustice in the world, and I'm sure it's an experience we've all had, that people are talking about stuff and they seem to be missing something that we find to be very important. And whether you want to yell at the screen or write a letter to the editor that doesn't get published, I suppose my history of so many letters to the editor that I've written that haven't been published. So that's sort of my history of activism. But anyway, there's so many things that I'm interested in, but I will try to focus on just a few now. So, one of the things that is going on is the cost of living. And there is there's like the lived experience, and then there's the numbers kicking around. But one important number is we have had a decline in what's called real disposable income. So there is a measure that, hey, we don't have as much to spend on stuff as we used to. And way back when, when it was the then Liberal government was tweaking the tax system and saying to business, "Oh, mate, we've tweaked the tax system. You got an extra 0.5%. Isn't it wonderful?" And then you did have cafe owners saying, "Mate, what determines the profitability of my firm is how much money my customers have to spend. Not the piss fart little things you're going to tweak with the tax system." So, that is one of the things that's going on there. And then, if you look at the shopping centres and the supermarkets, and I mean, the ACCC has said, look, they're not price gouging. But when you look at what they've done, basically raising and lowering prices in a manipulative sort of way. Now, you've got to say that's an act in bad faith, particularly when, we're all struggling the way we are at the moment. And, I do listen to the traps and what professional economists are saying. And they are saying that before COVID, they used to sort of compete on price. But since COVID, they've suddenly figured out, hang on, we can raise our prices and get away with it. So it's not just, we're not just, dreaming. The insurance premiums really are going up because, the insurance companies are suddenly they've realised they can take advantage of the situation. Of course, climate change is obviously a legitimate reason for those in premiums to go up as well, of course. So it's sort of making the whole picture a bit more complicated. So, we have seen that sort of abuse going on with the supermarkets. But, there is the fact of shrinkflation, something they might be charging the same, but now they're suddenly giving you somewhat less. And, if you look at the shareholder reports about brand names, this is the stuff that we consumers aren't supposed to be aware of. But what's the magic of a brand name? You can increase your prices more rapidly than inflation. Of course, these days, the price increases are actually inflation, but never mind. That's what brand names do for us. And, this is to some degree the tip of the iceberg because we now live in a world that's a lot more wasteful, a lot more intrusive, and a lot more manipulative. And so these things that's going on with the supermarkets is the obvious thing. But, what's been going on the internet? And I know, there's a lot of technology people and positive people who have said good things about the internet. And let's say, look, the internet has been a wonderful thing in so many ways. And its original promise that, we're going to share information and ideas and that's going to lift up our society. And what has actually happened with the internet, it's become a corporate tool for, influence and manipulation. And once upon a time, we used to have advertising, and now we actually have markets in behavioural futures. Now, this is why the social medias love to track your behaviour and find out what you've done. And there's these creepy notions. It's like straight out of one of those Philip K. Dick movies, like I think it was Minority Report, that if Facebook have 400 of your likes, they can predict your behaviour better than you can. So what we get is your future behaviour is bought, packaged and sold, and here's your identity. And the way they sell it is, if we expose this content of this person, they might have a 40% chance of buying your product. It's not just this passive advertising of toss it out there and see what happens. No, it's statistically tractable that, this is how people behave. And that's why there's so much interest in what we do, and people are siphoning up our data all over the place. And they're undermining what it means to be a human being, let alone, the real, whether a voting system is real and meaningful. Like you had Cambridge Analytica and that stuff that went on with Brexit and a whole lot of stuff like that. And of course, quite apart from all that, we know that the US has gone completely off the rails at the moment. So there's a lot of problems with those sorts of things. And I suppose that is one of the things that our world, as I say, is so much more, wasteful, intrusive and manipulative. And when you look at like housing and the way the housing market is operating, that is wasteful because in terms of our whole economy, when I say waste, I say, look, people are spending money on gambling machines, damaging their lives, and there's so much money being poured into the property market when, really it would be lovely if our economy was actually generating wealth in a genuine way and actually spreading it around rather than having, basically people who run poker machines or property developers sort of hoovering it up. And that's what we have at the moment. So, basically changing around our tax system, getting rid of those tax benefits around property, putting in more land value taxation, those sorts of things. There's a lot of things we want to do to try to turn the economy around. And certainly public housing would be a lovely thing to build up as an anchor. And I mean, our cities, running out of infrastructure. We're up against a wall. We've got an infrastructure deficit. And, you have the familiar stories of, here's a reasonably well-off suburb with its schools and so on. And the people who work in the schools doing cleaning, even the teachers who teach in the schools or nurses, fireys, whatever, they can't actually afford to live in those areas. And some councils are developing like key worker accommodation. And this sort of thing is telling us that there's something seriously wrong. And of course, there are going to be people who are, basically struggling to afford things. And, this is the whole big picture. And I do recognise there's a big picture and there's a big set of problems to solve. But before I finish, I will talk a bit about transparency and whistleblowing. And we do know we've had so many whistleblowers that have been dragged through the coals. And, we have so many problems with our institutions, so much, whether you want to call it big corruption or low level corruption or just people being arseholes and getting away with it. It's all over the place. And, the whistleblowers that have come forward is just the tip of the iceberg. But quite apart from the fact that this is an injustice, these people should be protected, they're not being protected. But if we actually got behind the basically exposing this corruption with the whistleblowers, we can imagine what would that do for our economy and its productivity. And, there is the right-wing narrative which chases after productivity. But to my way of thinking, they're looking at the long things. They're not worried about all the money, that's thrown into gambling, destroying people's lives. It's not worried about all the minor corruption that could be uncovered by whistleblowers, but they're not being taken seriously. And these things would really turn around our economy. And I think if that released wealth were directed into houses and health and so on, that's a source of wealth that, we could redirect and basically be a lot better off with. But, there's so many issues to talk about. And I think, I should give everybody else a chance to say their piece as well. But, let's say there's so many problems in the world. And it's funny how the mainstream parties just seem to be quite blind to it. But I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much, John. So there's a lot of things that we care about and we do need action on, and that's why it's so important to have candidates from many different diverse backgrounds. And so John has been speaking for many years about privacy and economic reform, and I'm glad and proud to keep supporting that tradition of activism for privacy and whistleblowers along with it too. So we're going to jump around a little bit now and head to a very different part of New South Wales. I'm incredibly excited to, in a moment, introduce a new candidate, one of our regional candidates. I believe it qualifies as a regional area. If not, to hell with it, I'm calling it regional. I want to introduce a Central Coast candidate for the first time for the seat of Cowper in between Macquarie and Coffs Harbour, I believe. I've actually driven through it about 3 times in the last few months, so I should know this better than I do. But I want to introduce Jeff Marlowe to talk about his campaign there.
Hi. Sorry about that. Hi, look, I'll try and keep this as short as possible. Everyone obviously wants a little bit of time here as well. Look, in the Cowper region especially, as well as the rest of the country, as some of my colleagues here have said, we are in the middle of a housing crisis. This crisis is affecting all of us. We all know somebody who's renting, who's been struck homeless, who's probably, got a blue-collar job. Myself, I was in Brisbane at the time when I got hit with homeless. So this is a big sort of a key area for me. It hits home very personally, so I feel very passionate about it, to be honest. I believe that every family, every single person in Australia needs to have a house to call home. I believe this is a basic need. This is not a privilege. This is not something that we need to work our way up and hopefully be given. This was once the Australian dream. We all grew up watching our parents own their homes, watching our parents be able to buy, renovate, build, and not having to fall into this trap of being stuck renting. We need to have some very large reforms in the ways of avenues to purchase your own home. We need to have avenues in the ways that the rental bodies are actually adjudicated. We need to have people that are independent bodies in place to hold the real estate agents accountable, just like tenants accountable with our current ticker system. We need to have transparency pretty much across the board in the situation. Now, the housing issue brings me to my next biggest issue that I find in the country at the moment, and that's coming down to our youth crime. We all know somebody at the moment who's been a victim of it, whether you've been getting yelled at by some kid down the street wanting you to buy cigarettes, whether it's somebody stealing your car or your neighbour's tools out the back of his ute. We've all been hit at the moment. We all know somebody who's young fellow or young girl is doing some naughty things, and we're all powerless to stop it currently. We need to have an enormous reform on the youth justice laws and the ways that things are dealt with. We need to stop focusing on the end product. Yes, people are going to misbehave. Everybody misbehaves, but we need to work out the reasons that they're misbehaving. So we need to get to the root of these issues rather than just slapping them on the wrist at the end of the day. We need to root out these issues as they're becoming real. While these kids are still young, we need to change the way they're being educated in ways to deal with and interact with society. I believe that rather than lowering the prison age, we need to look at education and therapeutic services that we can put in place to try and curb and retrain some of these quite often learned behaviours. Again, as some of my colleagues have said, we're in the middle of a DV crisis here in the country as well. And it's extraordinary. Between the domestic violence and the homelessness, we're generating a culture of youth crime that's becoming acceptable. And we need to pull that back. We need to rein the strings in really quick on this one before it becomes an issue for the future of the country. Look, lastly, one of the key things I want to talk about is, especially now that we've got all these tariffs being introduced by America, we need to bring energy and industry back to Australia. We need to start worrying less about imports and exports, and we need to start worrying more about creating new industries in our own country, renewable industries in our own country. We've got so many viable options here in the ways of hydro farming. We can make solar farms. We need to keep everything here in the country rather than worrying about sending it all overseas and trying to generate funds that way. If we can create our own building and construction industry using our own materials rather than waiting for things to be coming in and going out, we're going to create a self-sustaining future for our country. And that's something that we really need to look to. The more we rely on all these other countries and places helping us out, the less we're going to be proud of ourselves as a whole, as a nation again. The less that we're going to be able to rely that when the turd hits a fan, we're going to be able to pull ourselves up out of that mud. Look, I think I'm going to leave it there for tonight, guys. Vote 1 Jeff Marlowe. I'm here in Cowper. Come and see me.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And I want to also, if I can be a little bit cheeky here for a second, and hang on. Oh, there we go. Okay, video's back. If I can be a little bit cheeky here for a second, I believe you have a very special announcement, which you are also planning to make about a certain radio show.
Absolutely. Look, I am in the process of talking with Anne over at Tank FM in Kempsey in New South Wales here. I am in the throes of setting up a podcast. I'm going to be inviting along as many of our candidates from across the country as possible. And ideally, I will be setting up a stream on YouTube so that we can watch and see it as a public forum. The idea is I want to get as much awareness for our campaign out as possible, not just for myself, but for the rest of the party. Even if we don't manage to make the entire waves that we're trying to this time, it's still going to be a generator. We're still going to be powering the movement and powering the awareness for the rest of the country and for generations to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And like there's a saying going around that we live in the most interesting century. And I've always believed most strongly in, on a personal level, in engaging in that kind of street journalism and documenting and observing the things of the things that people are saying and the things that are happening in these times, as well as also actively interceding to try and steer these events that are happening towards a brighter future. So thank you so much, Jeff. Good luck, best of luck there in the seat of Cowper. And,
thank you.
And it's a very interesting electorate, very different to a lot of the previous campaigns we've run, which tend to be more urban based. So I'm really excited to providing you support from here in Sydney, cheering you on, and hoping that a very strong result I'm expecting from you because you're such a strong candidate.
Thank you, guys.
Cool. Now, I'd like to take a couple of minutes now to speak on my behalf. So I am obviously Miles Whittaker. I'm the lead Senate candidate here in New South Wales. And if you have a look at my bio, I mean, well, first of all, I've been speaking a lot already tonight. I'll speak a bit more, so I don't want to speak too for long. But I've earned this right, so I'm goddamn going to take it. Now, if you've read my bio on the website, you would have seen that I have this thing that I tend to prefer to steer away from policies themselves and think more about meta solutions and systems analysis. And so to sort of, without bringing in too much jargon, but the thing that I'm most concerned about, which I would want to advocate for and take action on and see change in the world, even outside of electoral politics as well, is this concept of existential risk. This idea that in this century, we're facing multiple intersecting crises, which collectively and individually are destabilizing and present a lot of risk to the kind of future that we want to see as a flourishing and beneficial species and life on this planet. And so there's a lot of different conceptions about the magnitude and the impact and the risk and the severity from these existential risks. And there's obviously a lot of disagreement as well. And so while I can acknowledge that, I think it's still important, also even more important, to acknowledge that broadly speaking, as a species, we do acknowledge that we live in extraordinary times, that there is enormous risk and there is enormous instability as well, and it's getting worse. And so to name a few of the risks that people are most concerned about, climate change is obviously one of the ones we talk about very heavily, both as a movement and as individual parties and individuals as well, even outside of electoral politics. And that was actually one of the key founding issues for the Vote Planet Party, but something I've been engaged in a lot of as well, both as someone who studied physics and engaged in science advocacy. So some other major concerns that I'm incredibly concerned about include the very real risk of a broader war in Europe, the expansion of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And given that the US is currently engaged in appeasing actions towards Russia, and we're seeing now this very real risk that that could turn into a hot war into Europe and invasion there. And then obviously the US itself has made direct threats of annexation against multiple countries now. And so whether or not you think those rise to actual threats of war, we're now seeing a situation where we're actually seeing the decay of the American empire in real time and a shift towards a more multipolar world. And so that by itself, whether you agree that it's a good or a bad thing, the collapse of American influence around the globe, it is incredibly destabilizing. It means that we as a country and as a society here in Australia need to think very carefully, what is our role in the world with regards to the EU, to America, but also locally. We need to be looking locally to build up our community and our friends and our family in Southeast Asia, in Australia, with the ANZAC partnership as well. Now, there's other existential risks as well. Another one I'd like to highlight is the potential risk of runaway superintelligent AI. Now, there's a lot of mixed feelings on this one as well, but we do have to acknowledge that all new technology brings with it benefits as well as risks. And so I would be the first one to go out there and say that we need to be on the forefront of harnessing this technology for the benefits and the future of humanity, but we have to be able to do so soberly and acknowledging that all new technology brings with it risks that we need to do our best to analyze and prepare for. And so obviously with the development of AI, particularly superintelligent AI, there is a risk here that it would be misaligned to human values and human goals, in which case that presents a whole separate vector of risks. And so one of the campaigns that's been happening in Australia and around the world, which I'd like to mention, is that we have a front foot forward approach towards regulation of the emerging AI industry, including both guardrails and an AI Safety Institute. Now, what that would exactly look like is still open to interpretation. There are policies and proposals being put forward, but we as a movement need to be on the forefront in engaging with that policy and that advocacy, so that while there is we need to make sure that there's regulation on emerging technologies to mitigate the risks. And John has mentioned a few of those in terms of privacy and modification of personal and private data, but there are other risks as well. And so that's why I'm saying we need to be on the forefront to bring in those into our campaigns and advocacy. So to sort of bring these together, a lot of these risks, existential and global risks, aren't necessarily immediately intersecting, but on a deeper economic level, they do sort of tie together and overlap. And so in recent years, we've seen the emergence of what's known as a meta crisis, where the intersection of these different risks interplay in different and unusual and unexpected ways. And so in a way, while I might acknowledge certain specific risks as being immediate and attracting a lot of attention, in the long run, we need to be thinking about this meta crisis and how we can simultaneously work on all these risks without them necessarily interfering and feeding into each other. And so an example of how this meta crisis plays out is in a few people have mentioned the loneliness epidemic and how there's been sort of this uprise in nihilism, particularly amongst younger generations in the most recent years, recent decade. And so this meaning crisis manifests itself as a lack of connection and purpose in society. And so it's so easy to now start to see these connections when, of course, there's going to be a massive rise in global tensions, in contests over resources, when people individually and community and society don't have these connections and don't have this purpose to bind us together. And so I want to be out there advocating most strongly that we should be building community as a fundamental way to work on the meta crisis at a fundamental level, in a way that feeds into everything else. By building community through our campaigns, through our advocacy, and through our activism, we can start to make progress on these issues in a way that it doesn't even matter so much what the solution is, but so long as we're here and we're talking to each other and we're working together and thinking very seriously about what is the future that we want to build. And so part of that future that I'm incredibly excited to introduce next is, in fact, one of our star candidates around Australia. And there's several reasons why. And one of these is that this candidate is actually one of our, by both absolute and by relative numbers, is actually our most high-performing candidate in all of the party's history. And not only the most high-performing, but also one of the most experienced, having run in, I believe, it's 6 election campaigns now at all levels of government. So I want to introduce Brendan Clark for the seat of Barara.
Yeah, hi guys. I'm Brendan. Running for Barara. I first started back with the Science Party, or the Future Party as it was called then.
Brendan, we can't see you.
Oh, hello. Can you see me now? Yep.
Getting closer.
Oh, sorry. Okay. All right, cool. All right. Yeah. We're swapping seats. Logistics. All right. Yeah. Hi. I'm Brendan Clark. I'm running for Barara. So I started with Science Party, Future Party, Science Party, and then we became Fusion Party. And so the last election I ran here was in the Hornsby by-election. And so I suppose in this election, I'm really focused about what's happening in overseas in the United States at the moment. When the Hornsby by-election we were running, there was a lot of talk about Trumpian politics in our area. And there was a lot of pro-Trump, Elon Musk, etc. And what was really scary is the fact that these people were really, really pro this sort of stuff, and starting to, start vocalizing some of the terrible policies that those people have. And this is before Trump had actually won the election. Once Trump had actually started winning the election, I noticed there was a lot more talk about normalizing those sort of values and then being able to vocalize those values, because once Trump won, people found it socially acceptable to be able to voice those things more clearly and calmly, as if they would be acceptable policies. Taking away women's reproductive rights, withdrawing ourselves from the WHO, similar to Donald Trump, taking ourselves away from the United Nations and removing ourselves as from the world. And one of the things that I really hate about this is the fact that after talking to what I would consider normal, highly educated people, that they are starting to accept some of these policies as acceptable. And people where normally maybe a couple of years ago when I was speaking to them, they would have been horrified about some of these types of ideas. Then these became normalized to those people. Sorry, I got a bit of feedback. Yeah.
Oh, Brendan, we can't hear you anymore.
Okay. Yep. Okay. So the good part about the world is that we've got this science and technology focus, part of the Science Party and Fusion Party. And one of my big passions is actually talking, instead of the dystopian aspect, but the utopian aspect of what we can do with science and technology. And that's where we got involved with the Transhumanist Party back in the old days. And we've all the Science Party. by talking up how we can actually use that science and technology for the betterment of everyone. So we can do things like housing affordability. We can do things like increasing education and reducing the barriers of people by using technology for good. We can use it for, I suppose, one of the issues is, sorry, I can hear it echo. yeah. We can use this for these for the renewable energies and getting rid of the energy crisis and actually just basically giving a level playing field to everyone in the world. One of the big things I hear about in Hornsby as well is the housing affordability crisis. And so this is not just people buying houses, this is people renting, and also from small businesses being able to actually be able to afford to run their businesses in shopping centres and things like that because the commercial rent is too high. So this housing affordability crisis and everything else affects everyone from small businesses to people trying to buy and own homes and also people trying to rent. And that's also creating a lot of loneliness as well because people can't afford to live, they have to live remote areas from where they work and they take longer and longer to travel to and from work. And that's creating a lot of social issues there as well. One of the things I'd like to say is that AI is coming and most of the governments are not really talking about a focus on AI. And we've only got a couple of years before this may start really rapidly affecting the job market. And so we need to actually start focusing on a solution to this idea so we can use that technology for good with the appropriate safeguards and guardrails so that we can actually protect people from, mass job losses and things like that. One of the things I think we have really good hope in this year is the fact that we've got a very, very powerful team as part of the Fusion Party. We've got, the number of the big political parties that have joined together, and we've got strengths from the Pirate Party and the Climate Action Emergency and other parties like that. And so we've got a very, very good, strong set of policies that can work together. Thank you so much. Sorry. I'm very nervous. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you so much. And sorry about that. I'm trying to do 20 different things here at once. And terrible, shocking. But I did say we're gonna try things a little bit crazy and be a little bit more casual. You guys want to come back on the stream and say hi again? Yeah. So we're pretty much at like a midway point now. So I just want to say, great to have this chat going on. Please put your questions in chat if you want. If you have questions or if there's things you'd like to say. And we just got photobombed by the most beautiful little guy ever. Look at this. Yeah, so please put your questions in chat. If there's things you want to ask about candidates or comments, then yeah, please say hi and let yourself know. And also on the YouTube stream as well. I'm not sure if we're actively monitoring it, but we'll definitely jump in there.
Maybe you need to have a look, mate.
Yeah. There's a few comments here on the stream as well saying hi, a few people watching. So yeah, please put through your questions if there's things you want to ask or comments for the candidates. So we're going to we've finished with New South Wales now. Let's move south, and I want to so we have a literal legion of candidates in Victoria. I'm pretty excited to say that Victoria is definitely our strongest presence in the country at the moment for multiple reasons. And without sort of giving a bit too much palaver, though, I want to go towards our star candidate, who is also one of our strongest performing candidates now, a much newer candidate, but someone who's really leading the charge in terms of visibility, in terms of outreach, in terms of awareness. And
Can I say hello to Kathleen first?
No.
hang on a second. Who's hosting this meeting? Who's hosting this live stream? Just let me finish my intro first. So this candidate is, I think the thing that's most obvious about them when we sort of go to them is the visibility point, because in a very literal sense, their hair color is one of the primary colors of our branding. I want to go to Owen Miller, the candidate for the seat of Brunswick in Melbourne. Owen?
Oh, sorry, Kathleen's pretty insistent.
I'm taking over. Sorry, time out. I just say that on behalf of Democracy First, I just want to say thank you to Fusion for taking us in. And we do have a number of Democracy First candidates here. And if you don't know me, my name's Kathleen and I'm the campaign manager for Democracy First. And Owen's pointing at the camera. So I just wanted to say thank you, and to the guys that have turned up here today in Victoria, and to everybody around the nation who's turned up. And very big thank you to Miles, who is the always the one that's, you know, jumping on, doing everything. And yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, but mostly thank you on behalf of Democracy First. And we hope that our alliance will continue in some form or another. And we're going to switch it up here because I like to switch things up. And I'm going to ask Simon to come up first because he is our Senate candidate. Ooh, Simon!
My screen got hijacked, and I don't know how to feel about this. But if there's anyone who wants to hijack my live streams, it will be Simon. So please take it away.
Yes, and so certainly I back up for all the fusion that Miles is the he's the glue that's been holding us all together. So yeah, thank you, Miles. So yes, I'm going to face this direction. So I'm Simon Neeslaw, and I'm on the Victorian Senate team together with Cami Kornahat, who's our lead Senate candidate. I am the backup in case we get a real lot number of votes. And yeah. We can both get in. So definitely that's exciting. But I see my role more as a supporter, as more as a to support the team. So doing my main role here is doing a lot of organising in the background to back up Kathleen, especially with the organising of it, and to put on our best campaign ever. And I'm in touch with all the candidates to offer as much support as I'm able to do. So I guess what I mainly want to talk about is just a little bit more philosophical, and I'll try not to get too deep in philosophy, but I think there's a point to be made here that sometimes when I'm talking to people in the public about fusion, and I often get asked, why should I vote for your political party? And I think that framing is actually quite wrong, because it's not my political party, because I'm not doing it for me. It's not about me. It's about you, like the voter and everyone collectively in Australia, for what's best for all of us. So what I like so much about Fusion's policies, and of course I'm including Democracy First as part of the Fusion family, is that there is an overarching theme in these values that we have, where it's not about any sort of favoritism towards any particular group. It's just actually well-balanced policies which satisfies everyone's needs, where we can maximize everybody's happiness and minimize the harms. We just want what's best for everyone. And why I'm so passionate about fusion is because that's what I believe in as well. So I just want to share that with the world, really. It's not why limit to Australia. The world should deserve, everyone in the world deserves to be happy. So now that I've put out that bit of a philosophical angle, that it's not about me, it's about everyone and why everyone should be voting for fusion, I'll dive in a bit deeper about some examples of that. So I guess these are just examples. It's many examples. Of course, I would consider the climate emergency to be the number one issue, because without a world, without a safe climate, there wouldn't be any other issue. We wouldn't even be here. So that, of course, is number one. But just because that is the most important issue doesn't mean that there aren't other issues as well. So we're living in it's a very dangerous world at the moment. There's a lot going on, a lot of wars, a lot of things changing, a lot of uncertainty with our future that we really should be quite smart about, especially when it comes to the relationship Australia has with the US, and a lot of US allies are questioning what we need to do to avoid another world war. Basically, this is really serious stuff, and as I said before, that climate is a top issue. It's not that I'm saying that I need to push that aside. It is all tied together. So for example, with the if we get into a World War III, we're going to be so focused on fighting one another and trying to defend ourselves from whatever's coming from whichever direction. And I'm not just including the USA, but it could be from anywhere. Then if we're so distracted by that, then we're not going to be working on the climate stuff, which is just a scientific necessity, something that needs to happen if we're going to have a livable planet. Like if the CO2 will just keep filling the air, polluting the air, and we've already got 6 million people in the world dying every year from carbon like pollution causing cancers and that sort of thing. So this is a very, very serious issue. It's going to get very worse. So if we're distracted by all this other stuff, climate is out the window too. So I would really prefer it very much if we didn't end up in a World War III situation. So, there's a lot going on with Russia and Ukraine, Israel and Palestine. And one of the policies which is quite close to me is our world peace policy, basically. I'm not sure if it's a policy, I think it's more like a statement at the moment, but yeah, it's basically a policy where we are the only party out of everyone who has an actual tangible plan on how it might be possible to solve the conflict. This has lasted such a long time. Everyone else has given up that there's no real way forward, but we're bold enough to have a plan in place, and we're really excited about that. And we have a few people in Fusion who are actually working behind the scenes, trying to get something done. So we're not just we're not like the other parties who say things and say, oh yes, I support climate and I support Gaza and I support this and that. We're actually doing. It's not just on this Israel-Palestine that we're actually doing in the background. We're also doing things in the climate emergency space. We've got our members working behind the scenes, crossing party lines with other minor parties such as the Animal Justice and some portions of the Legalised Cannabis Party and the Progressive Party, who are already now part of Fusion, so who are working on what is the tangible plan that we can have to actually fix this climate emergency? How can we use innovation? How can we use really bold technologies that we can rescue this planet before it's too late, before things get in a very unlivable situation? So we're not just saying things for the sake of it to just try and win your vote. This has a really deep meaningful. We are deadly serious in our ideas. So look, people will say some of these ideas are unrealistic or something like that, and sure, I take that feedback. But we have to try. If we don't try, what's even the point? Like, if anything's going to work, this is what has to be done. I haven't seen any other proposals that would even come close to our policies. Our ideas are a cut above anyone else. We are the ideas party. So we actually don't just give a surface level thing. We go into the detail. We care about the detail. We don't just say, oh, let's just do this thing and then tick the box and say, yes, we've kept our promise or something like that. We see it through to completion. We have the feedback loop. We listen to people when we do other campaigns where we work with others. Like sometimes we assist, as I said, we cross party lines. Sometimes we assist some independent candidates. Sometimes we give a hand to some other parties. Like, for example, we helped the Australian Democrats last year. And we don't, when we do these things, we're not just box ticking. We're looking for the actual outcomes, and we follow through to completion. We're not, we get feedback from the community. We talk to people. We actually listen. What are the problems? This thing that the government put in, which is on paper a good idea. That's great. We support it. Like, say, for example, it's a health thing. But then they say, oh, but it's not working in this way and that way. And then we're like, okay, these are the details which we need to fix, which no one else does. They just say, we've delivered on this promise. We've got this new health service, but they don't care what happens after that. They don't follow through to see that the system that they put in place is actually working. So we're the ones who actually care for the details enough to do that. For me, in this particular campaign, personally, as I said, I'm more of a backup, but I do plan to make some more public statements to further the world into a better direction. So I decided that with my particular set of skills, I would be best placed to do some work on multiculturalism, anti-Semitism, which is the community which I'm from, the Jewish community, and Islamophobia, which is just as important because it's just a very similar topic actually, because we're facing very similar kind of challenges, almost the same challenges really. The way I see it, there's some other parties out there. I don't want to be too mean to others, but say the names.
Come on,
Greens,
give it to us, Simon.
Green,
Big socialists.
Victorian Socialists, they're the worst.
No.
Greens, right up there. Liberal Party in particular. These three parties, they're all the same. They just want to cause division between us. They just do handball one to the other over different issues, and some issues are deeply personal to many people in our community. So be it that from people from a religious background or Muslim or Jewish, or could be just someone's identity as being in the transgender community, something like that. Everything with them has to be politicized. And as I said before, I don't care about the actual details of these things. These are just talking points which I use to have wars, culture wars between each other. So to keep us all divided, they're more worried about the war than the actual solution. And when they keep us all divided, then we have the elite groups of billionaires up top who are pulling the strings, trying to, and they put money into these culture wars too. They want to keep us divided so that they can get away with, get all these tax breaks to mining magnates and all this other rubbish. And we're not going to get anywhere unless we can get left and right, or progressive and conservative. We can come together on common ground for what's best for everyone, except maybe the billionaires might not be happy, and make a better society for all.
Everything I find.
Leadership. That's what we want.
Hi team, is it my turn?
Great, Simon.
Thank you. I should mention actually, so one of the things I like most about Simon, besides his immaculate sense of style, is also, as a party, I think we were saying before, especially with John, we have many good ideas. We're solving the root causes of all these problems in our world. I think the biggest problem facing Fusion right now is our marketing. You look at like Labor, the Greens, you see their billboards, they get plenty of money. Their billboards, it says, your voice in Wills, working hard for Wills, and this works, they get elected. So yes, we can, pitch this thesis. And, John, as much as I love listening to the details before, let's keep in mind, many people are going to tune out, once we get past 2 sentences. So yeah, it's, please, all candidates, all Fusion members, there are many political veterans among us. Please, run, I should do this too more myself, run your, all your pictures, all your visuals, your ads, run them by someone who is going to be prepared to tell you this could use a bit of work. Because, there's no point us, throwing thousands of dollars down the drain repeatedly. Anyway, on that note, I should mention as well, I'm very proud to be part of Fusion. When we mentioned before, solving problems at the root cause. I mean, just a few days ago, for instance, someone wrote in, all these women are fleeing homes, domestic violence is out of control. You have to do this pledge, to prove that you care about it. And then so I mentioned to the rest of the exec, actually, our housing policy, our support of universal basic income, we already explicitly mentioned the effects of domestic violence in these policies. We're already solving it at a greater level than what this dedicated group wants us to do. And I guess, it's not intuitive to many people. Our policies that solve, housing, universal basic income, these are very broad, in terms of how they'll affect society. And the effects aren't even apparent to all Fusion members. I mean, there were people telling me like, oh, and that was so uncaring, farming off these people. Like, number one, I didn't respond to them. I was talking to the Fusion exec. And no, my point was like, let's not do this band-aids. Let's not do the virtue signaling. Let's solve everything. It's root cause. And I guess for those of you who haven't read through our housing policy yet, admittedly it is pretty long, but but it will solve so many problems at the root cause. It will move us. Everybody looks around at the moment. How do you make money in Australia? Like, oh, you speculate on real estate. Why can't we be a nation of innovators again? Our housing policy will fundamentally shift Australian society for the better. Anyway, I should just stop there.
Tell them about the climate virtue signalers.
Oh, the climate virtues. Yes, actually, now I mention it, it's proving quite difficult in Wills. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Wills is an inner north seat in Melbourne, and it's a tight, the media portrays it now as a tight contest between Labor and the Greens. It could flip either way. And so all these environmental groups are pouring money in. And one thing they love to do is that they have this email pledge thing. It spams all the candidates. You have to do more about climate. And, I went to their launch event and I told them, what do you mean all candidates have to promise to do more? Like, we're already offering geoengineering. What more do you want us to do? But they still love sending the emails, with the premise that nobody's doing enough. And so, they're using very much the same wording as the Greens. So the Greens environmental policy at the moment, it includes subsidized rooftop solar and, small community batteries, they like calling it. Compare this to Fusion's 800% renewables. Compare this to the geoengineering we're doing. What the Greens are promising, we want to, decarbonize at an industrial scale. And yet, to the average, seriously, ask the average person on the street, what do you think of the Greens? Oh, they have such a strong environmental policy. It is just nothing compared to ours. And it's not enough either. It's not enough to resolve the climate crisis. And so, I mean, it is disappointing that, these people see the Greens as like the gold standard. But I guess it goes back to the point before. We need, we've got the ideas now. We just need to focus on our marketing. That's the remaining challenge for us.
And tell them how they email.
I'm going to close up. I'll pass on to Helen now. Thank you, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you so much, Helen.
I'm standing in the candidate for Melbourne seat. It's for Fusion Party, and although I've only been with Fusion for 2 months, but thank you for everyone's support. I feel like coming to a big family.
Hang on a second. Can you, Helen? Can you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, many people don't know who you are.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes, it's Helen Huang. Yeah, I'm standing as a Fusion candidate for Melbourne seat. I'm a writer, architect, and a domestic builder. I have my own building company. So it's a businesswoman. I'm more emphasis on how to make Melbourne. It's at the moment we are number 4. It's the livable city, but I want to make it to be number 1. So my concentration. So Melbourne has. Oh, thank you. Melbourne has been green seat since 2012. So my main enemy, let's say, enemy is bandit. Opposition. Okay, opposition is the Green, the head of the Green, Adam Bandit. Yeah, that's right. And how Bandit? He's a bandit because his green policy is full of trash. So what I'm going to is mainly attack how superficial of his green policy is, and I want to show everyone that through my social medias across from LinkedIn, tweet, Facebook, and also YouTube. I will make lots of YouTube short clips about expose how those traps people hooked on, ordinary people don't know. And only Fusion's green candidates, Fusion's true sustainable energy policy will make the Australia be better, because we are more emphasized on technology, sustainable on technology, not just to use imported technology to make Australia green. No, this is not sustainable. So we will make Melbourne the innovation center of Australia. And well, Melbourne will lead the Australia and will gradually export new sustainable nuclear, or not a sustainable energy technology into the world. Let the world benefit too from Melbourne. So this is the aim. And also I will promote like UBI. I think it's important and it's different from Green's policy, because since Green is my opposite, so my policy is mainly concentrating how Green can't do, but we will make sure that represent Melbourne's interest. And then we will also talk about AI, because AI is important. However, how to make people still feel safe in the AI era. So that's AI safe and personal privacy, safety. That's all important in Melbourne's safety issue, because Melbourne has now grown so big, but people also feel very alienated, isolated. So the community also will be built as a harmonious and a well-coordinated society for everyone. So this is the main policy I want to concentrate to make Melbourne is different from last decades under Green. That's about it. I hope I have covered everything, but I mainly want to thank you to Simon for his guidance, help solidly spent a whole day with me, fix my computer. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you so much, Helen. Now, I believe we've got one last speaker from Victoria, but just a quick little interjection.
Oh, sorry, Mark. Erin doesn't just sing; she also speaks.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah. So I want to hear from Erin in just a moment when she comes up to the camera. But just a quick little interjection as well, that we do have South Australia and West Australia, wonderful candidates from both of those states, which I'm really excited to hear from. So let's keep rolling it forward. And Erin, to finish up from Victoria.
Hey guys, so you already know who I am. I am the MP candidate for McEwen. So these are the top 5 issues for my McEwen community. Number 1, housing affordability and homelessness. Number 2, mental health. Number 3, access to healthcare. Number 4, financial hardship and inclusion. And number 5, domestic violence. So whether it's 1 or 1,000 voices, I want to let my community know that I see you and I hear you. McEwen, let's rise on May 3rd. And here's a message for Rob Mitchell. Mate, you may have been in this seat since 2010. Thanks for keeping it warm for me.
Across to South Australia, if that's okay.
To support Fusion Party as well, together.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Fusion, for talking me on.
Thank you so much, Erin. Yeah, and sorry to cut you off there, but as I said, we've got wonderful candidates essay that I want to introduce next. And I want to take a quick moment now to give a very special introduction for our next speaker. And now all of our candidates have strengths and unique and special qualities about all of them. But given how we are in Australia, we have very special, unique qualities as a nation as well. One of that is the sheer geographic diversity we have. We are incredibly biodiverse, but we also have huge tracts of land and vast distance to travel between them. And in the last few months, I have traveled no less than 3 times between Sydney and Melbourne, racking up approximately 4,000 kilometers, give or take, probably more like 5,000 or 6,000 kilometers actually, road kilometers, which and yet somehow, with all of this travel I have done, the next candidate we're about to speak has been traveling more than me. I want to introduce our regional candidate and lead Senate candidate for South Australia, Imelda Adamson-Eggers, to give us what it's like from the dusty open road. Melody, take it away.
Thanks very much, Miles. That was amazing. So yeah, we've had 75 millimetres of rain in 12 months. We had 2 mils on Tuesday, so we're pretty excited. It is a big area, and rain goes around us quite a bit. So hopefully Adelaide and all those other places, Queensland, etc., are enjoying all the water, because we'd love some of that. So my focus, so as Miles said, I am regionally based. I am the lead Senate candidate for South Australia. I've got a fabulous running mate with Drew Wolfendale, who actually introduced me to the party about nearly 12 months ago. And he's an absolute kick in the pants. So, you know, if you don't vote one for me, vote one for him for sure. So my focus is really on raising the rate of Centrelink to rates that are more just and equitable over time. So I've worked in remote communities for over 3 decades, and the thing that I've really seen most of all is the fact that we have this incredible desire to really weaponise welfare, and we've done a really good job of it. So I'd like to spend my time in the Senate reeling back some of that so that we actually have a more equitable welfare system when I leave the Parliament in 6 years' time. I'd love to get dental care into Medicare. Dental care in regional areas is very hard to come by, and good dental care is extremely expensive. So if we could get that into Medicare, we're not going to solve everything about it, but we're certainly going to make a big dent in some of the preventative health issues right across certainly South Australia and Australia. And I really want to be a champion for improved internet. I'm amazed I'm still here this far into this wonderful live event, because that was pretty hard. I'm pedaling very hard on my little pedal radio here. But I'd love to be a champion for improved internet and mobile connectivity at home, at work and at school. It is so vital. As we've alluded to earlier, the internet is a wonderful thing, and it has become a mainstay. Back in my day, 6 decades ago, I used to sit down and read a book, whereas now, even when I read a book, I do it on a Kindle. So connectivity and the internet are so important. Finally, my name is Imelda Adamson-Agars, and I have a clear vision for strong action that South Australians and Australians deserve, because everywhere that communities thrive, progress matters. That's it from me.
Thank you so much, Melody. Yeah. And I think I don't know, you guys can't see what we're seeing. Actually, no, sorry, you can see, everyone can see Melody's screen. And every second, there seems to be less and less pixels. So I think it's just getting increasingly potato mode. So I think this is a fantastic example of how successive generations of politicians in this country have screwed up our infrastructure, particularly our telecommunications infrastructure, to a huge degree, that we should be a nation of innovators who are bringing connectivity to the furthest reaches of Australia in all its glorious size. And so that's why we need to be supporting Melody and supporting other Fusion Party candidates who support technology infrastructure. Now, we have 3 speakers on the list here from South Australia. So next, I'd like to go to another longtime party veteran, a gentleman who walks into the room and then instantly everyone knows what he's talking about. I'd like to introduce the Science Party candidate for Adelaide, Matthew McMillan.
Hi all, how you all doing? I've decided to be a candidate again for Fusion because it's so important to have better policies available for people to vote for. And having done this for so long and talked to so many people, there's always that question of, what do you stand for? My first one is always economic justice. Tax reform to start with, working on toward the UBI as our party policy is. Even if it's small steps towards it, I'll be happy. And this starts with an old manager, actually. He told me to always ask why 5 times when looking at a problem. So when I talk to people and they tell me about specific problems, I'm usually tracing it back to economic injustice. society is based on people, and when everyone is struggling, it's really tough to care about each other. It's hard to support change and improvement when, you know, your concern is you. When you don't have enough time, what if you were paid better? You'd have more time to yourself. You could even utilize a small business to save yourself a bit of time. Your business is struggling. Well, more money in the community means that we can actually pay local businesses. We can support local businesses. Let's go for that rather than lowest price. One of the key ones earlier, domestic partnership has failed. Guess what? If there's a little bit more economic justice in the world, it's a little bit easier for you to just leave, because you've got that safety net, you've got that understanding that you'll be okay financially. And that's one barrier that needs to go. Debt cycles, keeping people in debt forever where they can't get out. Simple fix. And another one that people tell me is that they're too busy to take an interest in politics, which again, when you are cared for in a system, when there is economic justice, when you have time and you're not concerned with spending every second trying to save yourself a few dollars, you can actually take the time to take an interest. So if you're worried about losing your job, if you're worried about paying your bills, you're worried about whistleblowing, costing your job or career, if we do have more economic justice, if we are looking at even a UBI, as is the goal, you don't have to worry about those little things. But at the same time, when you are that concerned about how to pay your groceries next week, how to pay your power bill, your rent, then you're not going to be concerned about politics or climate change. Your concern is you. So to build better communities, to build a stronger community, we need to focus on economic justice as the root cause of a lot of the problems that are occurring. And that is why they are there. And I'm aware that this meeting has gone a bit long, so we'll leave it there.
Thank you so much, Matt. Yeah, and I fully agree. And I think that's also so important to acknowledge that we as a movement, some people have called us left wing. And in recent days, we've also been called right wing as well, which I find pretty funny. And so I think the point to acknowledge here is that our solutions go beyond left or right wing politics. And we need to look at the underlying root causes and then apply evidence-based solutions. So solutions that work no matter where they come from. So I think that is really one of the core strengths of the party and of the movement. Now, speaking of the movement, our final speaker for South Australia is again quite a special individual and someone who needs no particular introduction because we all know him at least as well as I do, and that's our. If he can turn his goddamn camera on, it's beloved dear leader, party president Drew Wolfendale, and Senate candidate for South Australia. Thank you, Drew.
All right, thank you for that, Miles. As I'm also running the stream, that was a little bit of a shuffling to make that work, but we're all good. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Yes? Someone confirm? Yep, good. Okay. Look, I'm running second on the Senate ticket, so I won't spend too much time talking about myself, but I will spend just a little moment talking about the party. When Fusion came together, before the previous federal election, people said very loudly that we wouldn't last 3 months, never mind 3 years. And yet here we are, stronger than ever before. And that was before Democracy First and the Progressives came to join us for this federal election. So we know we're speaking to what people want to see in the world. The challenge for us is just how do we reach them and how do we get them to know about us, really? Because wow, that was a reaction.
I send one little love heart in chat, and the man just looks absolutely confused.
I heard the sound I got on my end. Anyway, my big areas are really about structural reform and resilient systems. I got into this because I felt that our politics was weak and fragile and becoming more so. And part of everything that I've aspired to do in my time in Fusion and also in my work on policy and in my advocacy for various things is about building up our systems, our politics, our economy, our legislature, all of these things in ways that are able to be resilient and flexible and adaptable for the future and the challenges that we have coming ahead. And I hope to continue doing that through this election and into the future. And that's all from me.
Thank you so much, Drew. And thank you so much to our South Australia candidates. And so what we're going to be doing now is we start to bring the stream to a close. We're going to be moving again clockwise and off to the sometimes a little bit sidelined, but within our movement, definitely front and center in line with all of the other states, full support for West Australia, who we give a national platform and support and resources to because the West Australian issues are important as much as anywhere on the East Coast or in Central Australia. So I want to go now to our lead Senate candidate for West Australia, who is a gentleman who's travelled at least as much as myself and Imelda because of the size of West Australia. I'll introduce Tian Carey Wilson.
G'day everyone. I'm an engineer. I like making things and fixing things. I like facts and logic. And if you need to choose a political party and you care about facts and logic, you have to end up with Fusion. That's the way it was me. It was that simple. Following the facts. Fact-based policy, evidence-based policy. Love it. Great sound bites. I hope we can all use them very well in this campaign. So many great candidates have said a lot of great things that obviously I agree with. Economic injustice is another one I'm really, really strong on. The middle class has lost the greatest amount of wealth to the wealthy class since the middle class existed in recent years. I think it began around 2020, and then we've all heard of the myth of trickle-down economics, but we can in reality see the trickle-up economics. We're all losing it. Whose fault is this? I'll give you an easy one. It's Gina Rinehart's fault and all of her friends. It's their fault. They're stealing our money. And how do we get it back? Well, there's a lot we can do with tax. There's a lot we can do with who can own so many assets, how much for how long. There's so many tweaks we can do in that space. It's not just individuals that need to own assets, it's the government that needs to own things as well, so that it can deliver services for its citizens. So big gas, they're not giving us enough. We're giving too much away for free there. They can still have their billions in profits and they can still give us billions too. There's a lot of change that needs to happen there. A lot of money could stay onshore. Profit shifting, we've just started looking at that. Public's just becoming aware of that. Hopefully, there's a lot more we can do so a company can't charge itself $10 billion to rent its logo from an overseas conglomerate in Singapore or something bizarre like that. So lots of changes to be made. Economic injustice, it trickles down, solves so many problems, whether it be domestic violence that was mentioned before, environmental ones, having the funds to fix and care, keep Australia beautiful, having the time after work to look after your garden, many important things. This meeting's gone on quite a while, so yeah, please use the catchphrases, get lots of likes on your social medias and get views. That's all for me for today. Thanks everyone.
Thank you so much, Tian. There's some amazing sound bites there. I love Get Fused. I might start using that now. That's a lot better than the ones I was using. So it's broad daylight where you are. You're outside in the garden there.
Yes, I am. And the sunset is at 6:27 and it's 5:48 right now. So yeah, still a bit of light.
Yeah, this is exciting for me. I still get a bit of that childlike kind of glee, I guess, where I'm like organizing across time zones and acknowledging that even within Australia, we are such a wide and diverse country that you know, it's evening on the East Coast, but over there you're still out there in the afternoon sun, possibly doing some gardening, seeing friends, you know, doing jobs outside. But we've got this kind of variety geographically within Australia and also within the movement too. And Milspec there in chat, long-time West Australia supporter, bravo, representing us here in West Australia. And I think this is so important too, that we represent all of our states. So now we're going to move in a moment to our final speaker. And I thought sort of how can we introduce this? And I think there's some of our candidates have been a little bit shy tonight. And it's obviously everyone is so brave and fantastic for coming up to speak and stand up as candidates and advocate for these issues. But there's been a bit of shyness in terms of the movements and the parties and the history that we've had individually and as party branches. And so some of us as candidates have identified where we've come from prior to Fusion Party, if we've come from, or if we've just joined Fusion Party as our first sort of political awakening. And so many of us here were also at the Unite 2.0 launch a few weeks ago, where we talked about how we'd come together as a new coalition with Democracy First and the Progressives. And so I'm very excited to have introduced already 2 candidates from the Australian Progressives as part of our national movement, and now to sort of close out the night and to close out West Australia, I'm really excited to introduce our final candidate from the Australian Progressives, who has a few very fire words to say, who has a massive platform, which we are now proud to support and join with, Tamara Allardyce. Tamara versus the Void. You can follow her on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all of the good platforms. And please do, because she's going to be smashing out that messaging for the kind of future that we want to see. So thank you so much, Tamara, for joining us.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I can never be accused of being shy. And guys, I know I'm last. I talk really fast. Don't worry, I'll be out of here so quickly. So my name is Tamara Allardyce. I am a Koori woman living on Menang Noongar, and I'm kind of fucking up the clock a little bit because we're going back down south from where Tiani's down to me. I'm actually in the Great Southern, sheep and canola country out here. And I have a different sunset time to Tiana as well, just because of how far south I am. So, you know, another difference in this great and vast country we've got. My first foot in the door of activism was actually, before I even got involved in politics, I was helping try and get school supplies for children who were stuck on Manus and Nauru in our terrible offshore detention facilities in Australia that we have. And so that really, for me, was the foot in the door for activism, and really was community. That's how I got my foot in the door as a grassroots community organizer. So as well as running in this particular election, I'm actually trying to start my own not-for-profit on the side, which is specifically targeting housing, which is why I'm so happy to hear so many of you talk about housing as an issue in this election. Just to let you know, I went to university and I studied politics, economics, legal theory, legal history, and criminology. I have a triple major in those subjects. I'm currently doing my master's in political communication, and I have 2 catchphrases you'll hear me repeat all the time. Economics is astrology for commerce bros, and everyone gets a house, full stop. They're the 2 things that all of my philosophies underpin. So we should not be making any decisions for our communities based on economic reasoning and economic thinking. It's completely ridiculous to think that the economics is supposed to be about the way we distribute resources. And our communities have historically been so much better at figuring out where resources need to go than companies and conglomerates that are basically just trying to turn our resources into more cash. Instead of doing, you know, commodity money to commodity, they're just trying to do cash to commodity to more cash. So they're not trying to work for our communities. They're not at all interested in actual resource distribution. They're just interested in themselves. And so that's why I say economics is astrology for commerce bros. Now, I do work in the housing space, actually. I'm a tenant advocate. So my job is to try and ensure people aren't at risk of losing their homes for things that we could help them with if we could get more wraparound supports for them. I'm also really pleased to hear everyone talking about FDV so much tonight, because we know that the #1 cause of homelessness in this country is family and domestic violence, and that is at all levels. One of the really difficult things is getting support for people who've been removed from the home due to FDV, especially people who are on 72-hour orders and things, generally don't understand how.
Oh, it looks like we may have just had a dropout there.
Is it us or them is the question?
No. Can I get a wave on the on other people's video? It looks like everyone else is still connected. Yeah, I think we had Tamara just drop out.
But it's not actually tackling the issues people are facing in our communities. So I'm really, really big on getting into the community and finding out what the community solutions are. When I was at uni, I actually worked on a project moving a FDV shelter that was based up in the Kimberley. The site that the shelter had been placed on was constantly getting ransacked, constantly getting attacked, rocks being thrown through the windows. And so we went up there and did a community consultation to talk to the elders up there and say, what do we need to do to protect this shelter? And they literally just told us to move it to a different piece of land, which was, by all accounts, looking at it from an outside perspective, would have put it in more danger. But it was on recognised sacred women's land, meaning the men would not go anywhere near it. So simply by going into the community and talking to them about it, we were able to solve problems that outsiders looking in for years hadn't been able to figure out what they were going to do about it. There was so much money being spent on security and bars on the windows. All they needed to do was move the shelter and all those problems disappeared. So often our communities already have the solutions. They just need people who are willing to go in and listen to them and work with them to implement those solutions. So that's what I'm a really, really big advocate on. As I said, like, I'm sorry, I've already spoken way too much as I'm the second candidate on the ticket, so don't have too much more to say. Other than the fact that I've been homeless myself. I was homeless with my 2 children. I've been homeless a couple of times, and I now own my own home. So when I talk on these issues, I'm not just talking on it as someone who's read it in a book or who understands it from a purely outside perspective or has even experienced, rental stress. I have been homeless. I've lived in a tent. I've had to hold the tent up above my kids because it was pouring with rain outside, and I had to keep them sound asleep in bed because I had school the next morning. I used to have to rinse off their feet because the tent shavings, the tent was breaking down, and the tent shavings were on their feet. And when they'd come out every day, I'd have to hose their feet down so I could put their shoes on and take them to school. And so I am intimately familiar with how impossible it is to go from living in a society where you have a home and everything's fine to finding yourself on the street to then trying to claw your way back out of there, even with all the services and supports and things that we have around. And a lot of that just comes to the fact that we do not give people autonomy over their own lives and make their own choices. We expect them to fit into these like pathways that are the one size best all for us. And so many people fall off those pathways. So many people won't go back to these services. You hear people constantly talking about how people don't want housing. They prefer to live rough. The fact is, when I went into a shelter the first time I became homeless, I got cut off from all of my supports and I had to quit my job. I was working nights in a bar and I couldn't do that in the shelter anymore. Our curfew was 11 p.m. So I was cut off from all my supports when I went and tried to seek support from the services that were available. So the next time I became homeless, I didn't. I went out and I found a homeless community and I set up camp with them because that was a far better support for me. The community that I was around was able to provide a far better support for me than any of those systems out there because they're too focused on what they think is going to work and they're not busy interested in listening to us and what we know as community members out here facing these issues is going to work. And that's why I'm so excited to listen to Fusion, because I've just heard so many people from so many different diverse backgrounds today all talking about their unique experiences and their unique point of views. And we need so much more of that in our government, in those halls of power, because there are too many career politicians up there who are literally just trying to follow the money and get more money for themselves and don't actually give a shit about our communities. That's why I'm so excited to be part of this movement. Thanks.
Thanks, Tamara.
Told you to be fast.
And I fully agree with the sentiment of that final investor. It's something I've been saying for years as well. We need less, and sorry to a few people in the room who I know fit this category, we need less lawyers and less business people in government. We need more doctors, more teachers, more nurses, and maybe a couple more engineers, yeah, too. There's such a thing as too many engineers sometimes, but like there's not enough in government. So let's get a few more in there. Let's get some scientists in there too. Let's get people who actually know how to have these solutions and how to reach out and talk to people too. And so like it was such a crazy coincidence. You mentioned your political awakening was working on the Manus and Nauru refugee asylum campaigns, because actually I was on that campaign as well in Brisbane in 2016 for the 2016 election. With the Pirate Party, with Brandon Selleck, our candidate in Queensland, and Alex Jago, who is in Brisbane right now, running the stream from Brisbane, and other members of the Pirate Party too. Our slogan at the time was "Vote for the Boat People," to support onshoring of refugee and asylum seekers, and also Pirate Party advocates as well. So now we're all part of this glorious fusion movement too. And I think and one thing I sort of really want to close on here as well is highlight another really important point that you raised, Tamara, as well, which is that possibly like one of the most important things around fusion is not so much the policies or the things that the things we're advocating for, but it's about this process of consultation. It's about this process of reaching out to people and bringing people in and building this community where we can work together to figure out these solutions. Because it's not enough just to say that, the science and the evidence says this. I mean, we're at a stage where even that itself isn't even being respected by government, that there's no evidence-based policy in government But that's also not enough. What's important is that we say, well, look, the science and evidence says this, and therefore we should be very seriously considering it. But we also need to be going to the people who our policy decisions affect. We need to be saying, this is how we think we can address this crisis, but also we need you to be part of this decision making too. And I'm speaking now to all Australian voters all around Australia and around the world as well, the Australian expat community, but then the voters as well in our electorates. So tonight we've heard from, if I've counted them correctly, 17 candidates from Fusion Party, as well as from the member parties of Fusion, from the Progressives, from Democracy First, from Pirates and Science and Vote Planet and Secular Party. And so we, while we talk about evidence-based policy and saying the science, the evidence supports the policy positions we advocate for, simultaneously also we're out there building networks and setting up processes of this consultation and collaborating and building consensus across our member parties, within our state branches, and within our communities that we all hail from across this broad and diverse country. And so with those final words then...
might I suggest, are there any comments on YouTube or any questions that are worth checking?
Yeah, good point. I'm going to have a quick scan of the YouTube. And yeah, we've had a bit of chatter going back and forth and a couple of comments supporting our candidates. But it looks like we've pretty much addressed all of the questions that have come through. And so I guess we've come up to we're almost at the 2.5 hour mark. So I'm going to abuse privilege to drag this out for very slightly longer, which is to make an announcement that I want to have a few more specialist live streams over the next few weeks. So obviously candidates are going to be switching over to much more local and ground-based organizing, going out and outreach, doing outreach in communities and talking to voters and talking to community groups and working on these, getting some traction on these issues as part of the campaign. But as part of the national support team as well, I want to do a few much more focused live streams over the next few weeks where we look at a few specific hot topic issues, and we're going to get some special speakers from amongst our candidates to speak to those issues. So the first live stream I want to talk about is going to focus on I want to focus on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and more. That's the maths in there too. So obviously we have a lot of speakers in the party who are very from that background of science and technology. But at the same time, also, we need to be looking at, in following live streams, I want to be looking at issues around economic justice, around environmental justice, and social inclusion, disability inclusion, and all of these other things as well, which our candidates have spoken on. So thank you so much to everyone who's been joining us tonight. And thank you so much to all of our speakers. Thank you so much to our watchers and our supporters. And for the people who are watching this recording back later on YouTube, please do hit that follow and that like, and we'll follow up. And the final request and message I want to put out there as well is that, as I said, opened at the start of this live stream, we have at this stage paid approximately $30,000 to the Australian Electoral Commission, and we've got at least another $20,000 to go still. Obviously, this is a massive sum of money, especially given that many of us are from backgrounds where I'm proud to say Fusion has given platform to candidates from diverse economic backgrounds who may struggle, and the party has supported those candidates and supported their message in the same way it does for all candidates. And so if you are able to give back to the broader campaign, either to your local candidate, to your state Senate team, or to the national party, who can then support all of the states, please consider donating. So you can find all the candidate donation pages on our website. Just go to fusionparty.org/candidates. And there's also a link at the top of the page as well. All candidates have donation pages where you can donate directly to their campaign and have donation goals as well. So at a minimum, candidates are raising $2,000 for the privilege of running for government, which I think is incredibly undemocratic and is a very clear attempt by the major parties to stop competitors from the minor parties like us from actually having a say. $2,000 is a massive barrier. But thankfully, we pulled together the resources to get almost just under 30 candidates around Australia on the ballot. And so we need additional money on top of that for flyers, for T-shirts, for stickers. And shout out to Owen's fantastic holographic stickers, which are popping up all over Will's. You didn't hear that from me, actually. Sorry. No one knows where those stickers are coming from. They're just appearing all over the country. But they look absolutely fabulous. And so similarly, we've got flyers and T-shirts and call flutes and posters and online ads as well. And unfortunately, these all cost money in order to get the word out, in order to actually help to spread our message. So please consider donating at a candidate page or directly to the national party. So thank you so much again, everyone. And in a minute, we're going to bring the stream down And but before then, I'm going to say good night and good luck to all candidates.
Thanks, Miles.
Thank you.